Hi all, in this video we'll decide about outsourcing or insourcing strategy using transaction cost theory. This theory was given by Coase, who was a renowned Nobel laureate, and we'll see how his theory can be used in outsourcing and insourcing decisions that an organization needs to take. An organization is always in a dilemma whether they should be doing activity in house, that is using their own resources, which means that whether they should be putting in their investment to build the capability, or they should outsource that activity through a third party vendor, through any contract, through any licensing cost, etc. So they are, instead of looking at one factor of making that decision, there are four factors that helps you make that decision. The first one is rent appropriability, which says that we should outsource the activities where the return on investment is normal, which means that if there is a perfectly competitive market for that activity and the rate of return for that activity is normal, we should probably think about outsourcing that strategy. And we should only integrate when we have the resources, that is, we should only insource when we have the resources to perform that activity. Example for that is Nike, which is an epitome of this strategy, where they only focus on marketing activities while all other activities are outsourced for them. From manufacturing to production to resourcing, everything is outsourced for them and is provided by a vendor. Most of the organization takes rent appropriability as the only way of deciding whether to outsource or whether to insource, but there is more to this story, which I'll talk about in a minute. The second most important thing to consider is the transaction cost, which is the cost associated with agreeing and monitoring the terms of the transaction. So let's say if we are entering into a transaction where a vendor is to provide us some goods or service, and the we are gonna consume those goods or services, then the costs associated with that needs to be monitored, and total cost of ownership should be taken. Total cost of ownership should be taken. What does that mean? It means that not only the cost of production of goods by the other organization should be considered, but also the management cost in order to monitor such a transaction should also be considered. Why is it important? Because the organization where your activity is outsourced may opportunistically hold you up, or many a case you may also be interested to opportunistically hold the other company if the other company has no more client rather when compared to your company. You should be wary whether it's not easy to switch partners, because in case that is there, the opportunistic cost becomes high, and you have a bonded rationality to make a decision, which means that your contracts are not long term in nature, they are not asset specific in nature, there is high amount of uncertainty, and the frequency of the transactions is low. So if I have to consider this, let's say an organization, example a bank, has to outsource its IT contract. There may be two things that they may outsource. The first one is the change the bank initiatives, and the other one is run the bank initiatives. Change the bank initiatives are generally short term in nature, which means that they have a frequency of renewal every year, and hence it may be difficult to outsource that activity because you are uncertain about the outcomes within a year. There may be opportunistic cost where the organization may have the skills required to do that activity, and once they know that you are not going to leave them during the project, they may charge you higher rates during the course of the project. Higher rates can be charged not only by increasing uh, by increasing the cost of resource, but it can also be, the project cost can also be made high by delaying the deliveries from the project. So those things have to be taken care of. Peculiarly, this is seen in Pepsi and Coke, where they produce goods and services in terms of concentrate. But many of the bottling plants are not ready to commit to them for a long time because they feel that the bargaining power of the organization like Pepsi and Coke is too high, and hence Pepsi and Coke have to invest in bottling plants. They buy bottling plants only because of the fact to reduce the transaction cost. No one wants to opportunistically hold each other. Last two factors are trade-off, which means that when one rises, the other one decreases, and when the other one rises, the first one decreases. And those two factors are to be considered in parallel, and these are agency cost and coordination fiat. Agency cost is the term when the self-interest of the person is higher than the self-interest of the firm, is higher than the interest of the firm. Typical example of that is that let's say that for a technology outsourcing in a bank, people may oppose outsourcing because the managers and senior people and technologists in the bank were well versed with one form of technology, and they don't want to lose control, and hence they don't want to adapt new technologies that are there. So their self-interest to enhance their employment comes for the fact of agency cost, where they prevent the bank in terms of adopting new technologies. The last one is coordination fair. So company decides that they will outsource, but once they outsource the technology for the organization, a lot of management effort and power goes into monitoring that sort of a transaction. This is continuation from transaction cost. But the most important thing to consider is that management treats its prime responsibility as negotiation, bargaining, rather than uh, rather than innovation that they could have brought about if the technology for them was in-house. Example for that is many of banks will have project management focus versus product management focus. I think based on the nature of changes that the industry is going, or your bank is going, or your business is going, the focus should vary. In case you have a very stable product and you don't need too much of changes in that product, project management approach could be helpful. But if there are too many changes in the product and long term it's gonna affect the profitability of your business, then product management focus would be good. So that's coordination part. So there are four things that needs to be considered: rent appropriability, which is whether you are good in doing things and whether the rate of return from doing that thing is good. Uh, the second one is transaction cost, which is primarily the focus on hold up, so that no one is able to hold each other, whether the buyer or the seller are not able to hold each other up. They are fair to the transaction because the organization collapses if the transaction cost is too high. The third and fourth ones are trade-off. One rises and the other decreases. The trade-off is between agency cost and the coordination fire. So if you have bank technology people in the bank for a long time who are not ready to change a lot, your agency cost would be higher. It may be wise for you to outsource the technology. But let's say that you have too many changes planned, and because of those changes planned, you have high management costs. It could be a good thing to in-house or in-source those technology changes so as to reduce your coordination fee. Thank you.